Welcome to As Fresh as It Gets, the program where we take you to meet the local growers, wine producers, beer makers, and fishermen. And we love the fact that you've joined us to tune in. Hope you learn a lot. Today, we have Cary Smith, Deputy Senior Harbor Master, San Mateo County Harbor District. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know I've been over to the Harbor District many times, and it seems that salmon and crab tend to be the topics of discussion. I wonder, Cary, if you would tell us what's the latest in the salmon industry.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We always appreciate getting the word out on the fresh products that come from the ocean on the boats to your table. The salmon season's been a little slow. We've been incurring 4 years of drought, so the numbers have been down. They've limited the areas where they can fish, and so it's been a little more difficult. The salmon that have come in are beautifully colored, wonderfully tasting, and there's just not enough of them for everybody who'd love to get them this year. Hopefully, as the season progresses later on in September, August, September, we'll have some more fish available that are caught a little further north up of Valinas and on the islands.
So when you say they almost can't keep up with demand, are you talking about just the general public trying to buy off the boats, restaurants, or who's the demand coming from? Everybody?
Kind of everybody.
Wow.
We really have a wonderful group of fishermen that have really worked hard to get the fish sales off the boat going, and so now it's so popular that a lot of times we don't have fish every day.
Sure. I know it must be tough when they go out and they spend so many hours trying to come in with a catch, right? And then there's a limited supply. So
yeah, I think that they're doing the best they can. It's a supply and demand thing. So actually, they're getting a better price.
Oh, good.
For their product now. It's just that there's not enough for the public, and the public is hungry for those fresh products.
Right. No pun intended.
No,
right?
Yes, right. Of course.
So Dungeness crab, the industry has been a mainstay, and certainly for many of the fishermen I know. And the last couple of years have been a challenge. I believe is it the domain acid threat? Is it
domain acid played a big role last year with El Nino. This year there was some staggering of the seasons up and down the coast because of the concern. It wasn't the crab meat, it was the butter or the intestines that a lot of people like to eat. We haven't heard of anybody getting sick, and the cool thing about Pillar Point is we're the first area to open up in the country. So we're probably, if not the top producer, in the top 3 between San Francisco and Bodega Bay for actually delivering your Thanksgiving crab. So that crab that's all over the country is coming from the small boats out of Pillar Point Harbor or the Bay Area.
Do you think, I mean, I'm reassured, I have no fear of eating crab. Has there been an effect when people read, oh, in other areas it might be iffy, or not so much? Are people smart enough to know?
I think with all the news and maybe not so true news out there, people are a little more skeptical of things nowadays, so there's a lot of questions. And it's just an education thing like everything. That's how you treat your product.
Sure.
If you keep it in a sealed bag in your trunk and drive for 6 hours, it might not turn out as well as if
you're not supposed to do that?
And it was cooled a little bit and you cooked it properly. I think the cooking properly is the big part.
Well, Cary, Jim Anderson has been on the show at different times and is always very supportive and representing your industry very well, the fishing industry very well. Let's take a look at our most recent visit with Jim Anderson. We're here with Jim Anderson, fisherman extraordinaire, Pillar Point Harbor. And Jim, I know you've been involved in all kinds of state commissions, and what are your current and past affiliations? I can never keep track.
Currently, I'm on the California Dungeness Crab Task Force. The California Whale Working Group, which we're dealing with the interaction between whales and crab gear. I'm on California Salmon Stamp Committee, which basically trucks and moves a bunch of fish in California and releases them in different sites. I'm on the Half Moon Bay Marketing Association.
That's it? That's all? And other than that, you squeeze in a little fishing, right?
Oh yeah, when I get a chance, I get to go fishing and make a living, yeah.
So you have your hand in everything fishing-wise. What's the latest? I mean, what's the biggest news you have these days in your industry?
The latest, we actually did 2 projects. One project last year where we created an alternative release site method for releasing the baby fish in the river and trying to do away with the issue of predation, stripers or birds or whatever that eat the baby salmon. And so they're starting to find baby salmon 14 to 16 inches long, which were our last year's fish. They're starting to see them in the fisheries right now. So it's neat to find out that that project seems to be working. And also we're increased the amount of fish that we're going to release in the ocean this year. Last year we did 800,000 fish. This year in Half Moon Bay alone we're going to do 750,000. We're going to do 1 million at Fort Baker. We're going to do 120,000 out of Santa Cruz, and it looks like we're going to do 240,000 out of Bodega Bay also.
Wow.
So those are taking baby fish and releasing them directly into the ocean.
So how large does a salmon have to be before you're able to release it? Is there a
There's an age.
You have a regulation in
No,
terms of?
it's not a regulation, but there's a certain age when the salmon is at a certain age that he can take being released into the salt water.
Oh, I
And
see.
so we do that. We also barge 200,000 fish from the Maqualamy hatchery down to the Golden Gate and release them. So we've been able to see how the fish goes through his cycle of losing the scales and getting used to the salt water. So it's really interesting to see all that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for the average viewer, people will read or hear, oh, it's salmon season or it's crab season. Can you give us a rough idea of what's in season when, so people can kind of mark their calendars in general?
Sure. So the two fisheries that I fish is I fish salmon in the summer, and that usually starts at the beginning of May and goes through. We have 2 weeks in October, but the main season ends September 30th, and then we have 2 weeks in October in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. The other fisheries I fish in the wintertime is crab, and that we usually open November 15th and it goes through June 30th. So there are some guys that still have some crab pots in the water and are still catching some crab now. And so we'll see how that goes for the next few weeks or see when that actually ends. The things like albacore will be a later summer things. The midsummer would be something like a squid or the rock cod season for sporties actually opened south of Pigeon this last weekend, so that opens earlier. So maybe this time of the year we'll start to see some kind of rock cod fisheries. We have a trawl halibut fisheries here going on in the harbor right now, and that's kind of a year-round, but it kind of has a cycle of the fish also. So sometimes of the year it's actually better than other times of the year, but they did fairly good the last couple of weeks, so there are a few of those around. And then black cod or something, those guys are actually starting the black cod fisheries, and so they're kind of gearing the boats up to go out and start getting some black cod. Some of the black cod will actually sell off the boat. The majority of it actually goes to fish buyers and is sold all over the world.
So just for the novice, and I'm including myself, you fish for king salmon, is that right? California king salmon? And what's the difference? We hear about Alaska salmon a lot. Is that the same type of salmon, or how do they differ?
There's king salmon, which are Chinooks, and that's the one salmon species that we're allowed to catch here in California. And so that's why we have it as our main fisheries, Chinook salmon or king salmon. Other states have coho fisheries. Other states have chums and sockeyes, and they have a dogfish. So there's a number of different types of fish in other states, but not in California. In California, we only have the Chinooks, or what we call king salmon.
Now, I know you need to obviously get back out and fish, but final question for you. I don't want to neglect telling people, if people want to buy fresh seafood, what do they do?
What we've actually did is created an app for us, the off-the-boat sales. It's called Fishline, F-I-S-H-L-I-N-E, all one word. And it's a free app, and you can go to the app and you can find out about the fishermen. You can find out about the species that you're looking at and whether we have it for sale. You can find out what some of the prices are. Some of the guys will even post their phone number if they're selling, so you could give them a call and pre-order right off the boat. So that's the best thing that we have here in our harbor, Pillar Point Harbor, is to go to the app and find out. The harbor actually does post on their phone line if we do have fish for sale, so you could kind of go through the harbor's website and find that also. And so that is some help to helping direct sales. Some of the app actually will track some of the different species that we catch into a restaurant or where it goes around the area, so you can try to follow if we have a wild king salmon troll caught right off the boats, that it's served in a local restaurant or something like that. So you might be able to track those fish into those places and find out actually what you're eating.
Those are fantastic tips. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much,
Sure.
and happy fishing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as always, it's interesting to hear from Jim, and the salmon release I think is pretty impressive. Do you have any idea, Cary, the survival, what percentage of the salmon released actually survive?
The Penn project is with Jim Anderson and some of the groups he
Right.
works with, as well as the Coastside Fishing Club. And since the project started in about 2012, they've released over 2 million salmon smolts.
Amazing.
So what happens is they come from the hatchery, and they're a little bigger than they were being released up in the Delta. Then they get to acclimate in the outer harbor for 2 weeks, so we're actually getting a bigger fish that's being released. The percentages coming out of the truck into the pen, I think they were looking at maybe a 5% loss rate, and then once they go wild, they go wild. We don't really know the return rates per se. They're shooting for less than 3% back to the harbor itself. So those fish are going all over the coast. They have fins, they swim. They were catching them last year in Oregon, and there are even fish as far away as Vancouver that were caught last year. So it's
Wow.
making a big impact.
And they know that because they're inserting something into the fish, aren't? I mean, like, don't they put a little sensor or some kind of, so they know if that's how they know if the fish appears in Oregon, right?
And I don't know the scientific term for it, but it is
I
a
don't either.
little tag in it that
Right.
is like a little chip, and they can do that. And they also have the way they cut their fins. And so they can tell also if they're a wild fish
There you
versus
go.
a hatchery fish.
There you go. So now let's turn to your duty as Deputy Harbor Master, or
Sure.
Deputy Senior Harbor Master. What is it that you end up doing? You're involved in harbor patrol. I don't think most people really have a clue all you do.
Well, we do it all. The harbor's like a small city. We have over 400 boaters, and about 35 to 40%, depending on that, seasonally are commercial fishermen. So we really facilitate everything from electric work to making sure the facility's clean to search and rescue. And we do approximately 100 search and rescues a year. We're the only patrol boat on the coast between Santa Cruz and San Francisco. So we do 24/7, 365
Oh my
search and
gosh.
rescue.
And in the majority, well, can you generalize in terms of search and rescue? What are most, I mean, is it just a boater who, are they fishermen you're helping? Are they amateur, boaters who?
It's everything. We respond to people off cliffs. We respond to
Wow.
swimmers in distress, surfers in distress. We've responded to shark attacks. We've responded to dogs swimming to Hawaii and helped them out. We do have a percentage of the fishermen that have some medical emergencies or mechanical breakdowns. It's kind of anything.
Wow.
And so we're the waterside support. The Coast Guard's coming from the Golden Gate Bridge, so they're usually an hour or more away. And our position is really centrally located, and we're able to help our commercial fishermen and our sports fishermen rapidly, and we've made a difference in a lot of lives.
So a quick naive question, you do it all by boat, right? I mean, or do you have helicopters as part of the harbor
The
district?
Coast Guard has helicopters.
Coast Guard does, of
and
course.
we work real closely with them. They
Okay.
consider us their 7th small station because we
I
don't
see.
have a Coast Guard station. We use rescue watercraft to go from the beach to the inshore surf line and out to the reefs where the boats can't get. And then we have patrol boats that work offshore.
Wow, so you're keeping the fishermen safe and all of us safe, right?
Yeah,
That's
I've
great.
done
Well, we
everything.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no
Thank you.
problem. You're welcome.
One thing that we think is of interest to our viewers, we've talked about fish today, and of course, with any good meal, seafood meal, you want a nice wine, right? And we're
Sure.
fortunate to have tremendous wineries in San Mateo
definitely.
County, and we thought we'd take a look at one of the newer ones, Flying Suitcase Winery.
Okay.
We're here in San Carlos at Flying Suitcase Winery, and I'm thrilled to introduce the owner, Anders Vinter, who does this as a side business, actually, or a hobby. And interesting name, beautiful winery. Can you tell us how it started?
Yeah, both my wife and I have always been very interested in the wines. And when we moved to San Carlos, to California, about 10 years ago, we started being more interested in all the California wines. And one of my friends is a really good winemaker. He's a 4th generation winemaker, and I was helping him out in his winery. And at some point he said, "Hey, Anders, you should try and make your own wine." So I did, and that was a Sauvignon Blanc, and it tasted well, and we got an award for it. And then we went from a very small production to a bigger production, and then we've been doing that for about 5 years now. And last year we opened this tasting room here, which we're very happy to have.
Of course. So you did it initially at home? Is that how you did it?
We did it at other wineries.
Oh, I
we
see.
started out on Treasure Island, and then we made the wines at another winery here. Now we have the tasting room here. We got all our barrels. We got everything here.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you have a very unique tasting room, and I noticed the tables are all, what, you obviously chose those very carefully. Is there a story behind those?
No, just that we wanted it to be very flexible, easy to move things around, because we also do events. Depending on what type of event and how busy we are, we can move tables in and out in different configurations and so on. So, yeah.
So, talk to us about your wines. I don't know, do you have a particular favorite of your own?
Right now, I do actually have a favorite.
Do?
So we just have made or bottled our first blend, and I'll show you how that looks.
Good.
That's this one here. The funny story with that is that I was tasting an Italian wine, which was a combination of Sangiovese and Cabernet Sauvignon, and I thought it was really nice. And then came back here and tried from different blends in the barrels to make something that would be sort of similar. And so this is our first blend. This is 50% Cabernet Sauvignon and 50% Sangiovese. We call it Winemaker's Blend, and it's a very nice, easy, drinkable wine.
Now, do you submit your wines for many contests or competitions? There are
Not
so
that many, but we pick certain ones.
Sure.
So we usually submit to very specific ones. One that we just got a double goal actually is in the San Francisco Chronicle wine competition, which happens to be the world's largest wine competition for American wines. So we're very happy with this one. This is a Russian River Zinfandel that we just got the double gold for, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's called Wanderlust, or I say it.
Wanderlust, yeah.
Wanderlust, very nice.
Yeah.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about the tasting room itself. You're not open every day, or are you open every day?
We're open Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. Friday 5 to 9, Saturday and Sunday 1 to 5, and then events and so on.
Of course, special events.
When we have that, yeah, as well.
And you have a very unique twist to your winery. You have a special room that I've never heard of in another winery. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, my wife Vicky and I have a son, and when we were initially touring up in Napa, it was always a struggle for our son to come up there, because wine tasting with your parents is not always interesting.
A little boring for kids.
It's a little boring, yeah. So we decided to have a kids play area. So I think we're the only winery in the area that actually has a kids play area. Kids can play games, they can write on the wall, they can do all different kind of things, and it's in a separate part of the winery.
Do you let the adults write on the walls as well?
That they can do actually in the restroom. Sometimes we check what has been written in the restroom. So we have 4 walls there where you can also write, and which is actually quite fun.
Oh, I'll bet that's fun. I don't know if that's PG enough for us to put on camera, but we might check it out. So what recommendations do you have for people who might not be wine experts, or, I mean, how do they learn to develop a good taste for good wines? How do they really learn? What would you suggest as a starting point for people?
I think the first thing is either you like a wine or you don't.
Right.
And the fun thing for us is that we meet so many different people in the tasting room. And some like this wine better than that wine, and vice versa. So it's, I would say the first thing to do is look at the color, smell it, see what you think of that, and taste it, and whether you like it or not. And then it's always fun to think about what would this pair well with. What would it pair well with in terms of food? That's always interesting.
And I'm sure you can help people with that as well, right?
Yeah, we can do that. And the type of wines we make, they're all wines that we like.
Of course.
I would say that the whites, we have Sauvignon Blanc and we have Chardonnay. Our Chardonnay is from Napa. And of reds, we're doing 2 styles. We're doing the traditional heavy California reds, and then we do a lighter style, which most of our Italian varieties are. So we do Sangiovese, Barbera, and then a little bit heavier Aglianico, and then we do the blends of these as well.
And I'm assuming you have wine club. Might as
Yes.
well get a plug in for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do people choose red or white, or do you choose? Or
we
how does
have
that work?
we have a wine club, and we call it the club class because everything with Flying Suitcase is about travel as
Yes.
in our marketing. So we say club class and come fly with us. You can sign up for either whites only, reds only, everything, or a little bit of a surprise, and that is what we decide.
I see. Okay.
And you get 3 shipments every year.
So that brings us to the name of the winery. How did you choose the name Flying Suitcase?
Yeah, my accent is comes from where I was born in Denmark, and Hans Christian Andersen wrote lots of fairy tales, and he was originally from Denmark. One of his fairy tales is Flying Suitcase. So we wanted some connection to Denmark, and that's what we decided. And then after that, it was actually very easy. So what you'll see around in the winery here is lots of things related to travel.
Sure. So here we are in the winemaking room. I notice a lot of barrels. How much wine do you actually produce every year?
I produce about 1,000 cases
Wow.
every year, so 12,000 bottles. And the funny thing is, maybe some statistics, it's interesting to know, when you look at the barrels here, they don't necessarily look that big, but there's actually the equivalent of 300 bottles in one barrel. So you can add that up. That's a lot of wine. That's a lot of
so
wine.
I'm assuming you need a forklift or something to.
Yeah, I have a
move
forklift
things
to move
around.
things
I'm
around.
sure
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, it's very, very heavy. Yeah.
And so for local restaurants, if a local restaurant wants to carry your wine,
Yeah.
they would just contact you, right?
Well, yeah, either they contact us or we go out and have a meal and we sell our wines there. But
I see.
both ways work. And
Anything
we're in a
works?
lot of different restaurants here in St. Carlos as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you normally, I know you were talking about tasting from the barrel. Do you want to show us how that works? Or
Yeah.
may I hold
So
something
I'm
for
just
you while you do
I'm
it?
just taking the bong out here, and then this is called a wine thief. This one that we now are pouring in here is our 2016 Barbera. So 2016 Barbera is still a very young wine, so it's by no means ready. But what I do is I smell it, I taste it.
And how do you know when it's ready? I mean, how do you
Well, it's
just...
it's really about what I would like from the beginning. So the heavier wines we make, they usually will stay on the barrels for at least 2 years.
Wow.
One we actually have for almost 3 years in the barrels. And that gives a lot more structure and body to the wine. This one, you can even see it on the color, that this is a light wine.
Yes.
It's a Barbera. Smells nice, but it still needs to develop. It's going to be a light wine, as you can taste. And that's the one style we do. So we do the lighter style, which is this one on neutral oak. And then we do the heavier, more usual California style, which is on newer oak.
It's amazing clarity too.
Yeah, and it's again, this was produced, or we harvested back in September, early September. And it will be ready most likely by the end of this year, because this is one of the lighter styles.
So it sounds like your grapes come from different areas. Any from Santa Cruz Mountains or primarily Napa and
I
Russian
make
River?
one white wine from Santa Cruz Mountains. This one, the Barbera, is from Amador.
Oh.
And Amador County is actually very good for Italian varieties, because the climate is very much like in Italy.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the Cabernet Sauvignon comes from Rutherford in Napa.
Oh.
So that's a heavier style.
Right.
And more kind of the earthy
Right.
Rutherford dust, as they call
So
it.
the white wine that you make from the Santa Cruz Mountains is called, which wine is that?
It's a Chardonnay, which is a blend of that and Amador County, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
having us over
All
today.
right. Cheers.
Appreciate it. Who knew wineries could even have a room for children? That's pretty inventive on their part.
Definitely.
We so appreciate your having been here, Cary, today, and thank you for all that you do again, and you and all of the team at the Harbor District, and best of luck to all of our fishermen.
Yes, thank you very much, and we encourage everybody to stop by our Harbor Master's office. We try to answer as many questions as we can and really try to point you in the right direction. I think fish line that Jim Anderson brought up in his clip is a very useful tool. All the fishermen are independent business people, so we don't always know at the Harbor office who's got what and where. But I can tell you the weekends are generally better than the weekdays if you want to come down and get some fresh seafood products.
Well, that's great to know. And they'll be looking for you now because they're going to recognize your face, right?
Yeah, sure, we'll say hi to them, no problem.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to As Fresh as It Gets. We look forward to seeing you on future episodes.